Lorenzo throws Mia out of his office. She begs. He laughs. Final line before guards drag her away. If there was ever a baby, you made sure it was gone. Hey, my beautiful souls, welcome to Dark Love Stories. This is not only a channel, I am your storyteller, Selena. This is a family, and if you are first time here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notification bell. Now let's dive in. The city sprawled below Lorenzo De Luca's penthouse like a glittering beast, neon veins pulsing with life, sirens and distant gunshots. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the world that he ruled, not through politics, not through law, but through fear, influence, and wealth. Every light, every shadow in this city answered to him, or at least most did. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk, tailored suit sharp, tie perfectly knotted, his blue eyes scanning the city as if he could read its every secret. Neck tattoos peeked from beneath his crisp white shirt, subtle reminders of the man he had been, the man he had become. He prided himself on control, absolute cold control, and yet, the moment the office door burst open, that control began to fracture. Mia Russo stood there, coat torn, eyes wide with fear and desperation, her hands trembling as she clutched a small satchel to her chest. Her hair, once immaculate, now hung in disarray, damp with rain or sweat. It was impossible to tell. Lorenzo had not expected to see her. He had not expected her to come back, not after 5 years of silence, not after he had told himself she was gone, not after the lie he had fed himself about betrayal. Lorenzo. Her voice cracked, high-pitched with urgency, but steady enough to pierce through the armor he had built around himself. Please, you have to help me. They're after me. Lorenzo leaned back, studying her, a slow, deliberate motion. He let the tension hang in the air. His office was dark, lit only by the city lights behind him and a single green desk lamp, casting harsh shadows on his chiseled features. The blue of his eyes, normally cold and calculating, flickered with annoyance, a spark of irritation threatening to ignite into full fury. After you? His voice was low, smooth but sharp. After what? They know about the baby, Lorenzo. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. They know and they won't stop. I can't. He cut her off with a laugh, low and cruel, echoing through the office. It was not a full laugh. It was the kind of sound that sent shivers down the spine of men who had challenged him before. A baby. You think I care about your lies, Mia? You think I care about the consequence of your poor choices? Her eyes widened, but he barely noticed. He didn't want to notice. He had always known she could manipulate emotions, even now standing in his office soaked, shivering with a life growing inside her. She'd always been able to reach under the skin of men, but not him. Not anymore. Not now. You don't understand, she insisted, stepping closer, tears streaking her face. This isn't about money. This isn't... It's always about money with you, Mia. His hand slammed against the desk, rattling the papers, the pens, the crystal glass he didn't even touch. His voice rose, sharp and raw, echoing in the spacious office. You always wanted what you could never earn. You always took what I worked for and called it love. I am done. I am finished listening to your lies. Guards. 2 silent figures appeared from the shadows, impeccably dressed, their hands at their sides, eyes trained on her. Mia froze, knowing she was physically powerless but emotionally unyielding. Her gaze locked on his, burning with a mix of fear, defiance, and despair. Please, I'm begging you, just this once. Lorenzo's expression hardened, the last remnants of hesitation draining away. This once? He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. There will never be another once, Mia. You had your chance. You ruined it. Guards, take her out. Don't ever let her in again. Understand? Yes, sir, one guard said, cold and precise, moving forward. Mia's hands went up, but not in surrender. She clenched her satchel tightly, as if holding on to the only thing in her life that mattered. She whispered his name one last time, almost inaudible. A prayer, a curse, a plea. Lorenzo. The guards grabbed her arms. She struggled, not violently but desperately, her body language screaming the raw terror of someone who knew their life depended on the mercy of a man who had none. He did not flinch. He did not step forward. He simply watched, his sharp blue eyes fixed on her, emotionless, the ultimate judge of her fate. And then, as she was dragged away, she turned her head, giving him one last look, a look that promised that this was not over, that she was not defeated, that the storm she carried was far from gone. The office was silent once more. Only the hum of the city below filled the void. Lorenzo returned to his desk, poured himself a drink, and stared at the lights as if trying to reclaim the sense of power he had lost in those fleeting moments. Pride surged again, but underneath it, a tiny, dangerous knot of unease began to form in his chest. He poured the drink down the sink without tasting it. Outside, the storm that had begun in the city intensified. Rain lashed against the windows, lightning splitting the sky. And somewhere, in the wet streets below, Mia Russo's life, and the secret she carried, was slipping further out of his control. Lorenzo's phone buzzed on the desk. He ignored it, but the screen lit up anyway. A single message flashed. "They're coming! You should have listened!" For the first time in years, Lorenzo felt fear, not for himself, but for something he couldn't control. And just like that, the walls he had built around himself began to tremble. Lorenzo's blue eyes narrowed as he stared at the message, hands trembling, not from rage, but from the dawning realization that rejecting her might have been the gravest mistake of his life. Outside, the storm roared, and in that moment, he knew one thing with terrifying clarity. Whatever was coming next, it would change everything. The neon lights of the city blurred into streaks of red and blue as Lorenzo's sleek black car tore through the rain-soaked streets. The wipers moved furiously, trying to clear the storm, but even the rain seemed powerless against the dread building in his chest. Every turn, every honking horn, every distant siren reminded him that the city he thought he controlled was indifferent to his power. The streets were alive with chaos, but his mind was frozen on one thought: Mia. The thought of her vulnerable, hunted, and carrying his child clawed at him like fire. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles whitened. He had always been in control. Every business deal, every hit, every betrayal, every death. But now he felt the strange, foreign sensation of helplessness. He was racing against something he could not see, against time itself, and the fear of what might have already happened gnawed at him relentlessly. The car skidded around a corner as a delivery truck braked suddenly. For a moment, the world went sideways. Rain-slick asphalt, neon lights reflecting off wet surfaces, blurred outlines of pedestrians, and Lorenzo realized he had not blinked for what felt like hours. The thought of Mia on the streets, hunted and defenseless, ignited a rage so intense it made his teeth ache. He slammed the wheel, straightened the car, and muttered under his breath, "No one touches her. Not anyone." As he neared the hospital, the radio cut into the low rumble of rain with an urgent breaking news alert. A multi-car pileup had occurred on the freeway, caused by a high-speed chase between two rival gangs. Emergency vehicles surrounded the wreckage. The camera footage on the news showed flashing red and blue lights, crushed metal, and paramedics rushing a stretcher toward an ambulance. And then he saw her, Mia, unmistakable even through the chaos. Blood streaked on her face, her hair plastered to her skin, eyes closed as paramedics worked frantically. She was lying on a stretcher, a coat over her form, and for the first time, Lorenzo saw what he had missed in the office earlier, a slight but undeniable curve to her abdomen. She was pregnant, carrying his child. His stomach twisted, his chest tightened. The world outside the car ceased to exist. All he could hear was the thunder of his own heartbeat and the frantic, muffled screams from the TV broadcast. Rage, fear, and guilt collided violently. How could he have been so blind, so arrogant, so cruel? The car skidded into the hospital parking garage, tires squealing on wet concrete. Lorenzo slammed the door, grabbed a sleek black pistol from the glove compartment, a weapon he rarely used unless absolutely necessary, and sprinted through the rain into the sterile hospital entrance. The automatic doors parted with a hiss, revealing the cold, fluorescent-lit lobby, bustling with nurses, doctors, and worried relatives. Lorenzo's blue eyes scanned the crowd, sharp and precise. He was a predator in a world of prey, and yet for the first time in years he felt preyed upon. By time, by circumstance, by a truth he could not undo. He stormed to the reception desk, voice commanding and low. "Where is she? Now!" The nurse behind the counter flinched at his intensity, fumbling with her computer. "Sir, the patient. She's in critical condition. ICU, 3rd floor, room 12. Lead the way." He moved faster than anyone could expect, adrenaline surging. Every hallway was a blur, tile floors gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights, the distant echo of heart monitors, the faint scent of antiseptic and blood. Nurses and orderlies stepped aside instinctively, sensing the authority in his stride, though none knew the depth of the storm inside him. When he reached the ICU corridor, a doctor stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "You can't go in, sir. The patient is unstable. Only authorized personnel." "I am authorized," Lorenzo interrupted sharply, his voice cutting through the hum of machines. "I don't care about protocol. Step aside." The doctor hesitated, studying the unmistakable presence of Lorenzo De Luca, the city's untouchable Mafia boss. Fear and respect warred on his face. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but be careful. She's fragile." The door to room 12 slid open, and Lorenzo's gaze fell on Mia. She lay motionless, her chest rising and falling weakly beneath the hospital gown. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, casting red and green lights across her face. Her lips were pale, her fingers twitching faintly. And there it was again, the unmistakable curve of her belly, fragile, but alive. Lorenzo's hand tightened on the pistol, not for him, but for the world that had dared to touch her, the world that might take from him what he could not afford to lose. Rage boiled inside him, hot and consuming, but it was tempered by a deeper, more dangerous emotion. Guilt. He had rejected her. He had pushed her away. He had ignored the warning signs, and now the cost of his pride was laid bare before him. He stepped closer, scanning the room for threats. Nothing. Just the sterile quiet, the constant beeping of heart monitors, and the smell of antiseptic. He wanted to reach out, to hold her hand, but stopped. Fear of harming her by accident kept him frozen. He wanted to scream, to beg forgiveness for a mistake he could not take back. Then his eyes fell on her phone, lying on the bedside table. The screen lit up briefly. A message flashed. "They know. Help me." His heart skipped a beat. She had tried to contact him. She had trusted him, and he had blocked her. The room felt impossibly small now, the walls closing in as Lorenzo realized the full weight of what had happened. Every decision he had made, every moment of arrogance, every cruel word now carried consequences. His mind raced. Who was after her? How had they found her? Was the child safe? And more importantly, could he even save her? The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, faint, measured, deliberate. Not hospital staff, not emergency responders, something darker. Lorenzo's eyes snapped toward the door, every instinct on high alert. He clenched his jaw, hand tightening on the pistol. Every second counted. Every heartbeat was a countdown. Whoever was coming, they had no idea who they were about to face. And then he heard a whisper, not through the monitor, not through the walls, but in the pit of his chest. "You thought you could ignore me forever, Lorenzo." The ICU door handle rattled. Lorenzo's blue eyes narrowed. The storm outside the hospital seemed to echo the storm now inside the room. The truth hit him like a thunderclap. He had arrived too late, and what was coming next could destroy everything he had ever loved or ever hated. Cliffhanger. The door to the ICU burst open, and Lorenzo caught a glimpse of shadowed figures moving with lethal precision. His pulse surged. Every second stretched into eternity. He raised his pistol, heart hammering. And then, one of the figures stepped into the dim red and blue light, revealing a face he had hoped never to see again. The corridor outside the ICU felt impossibly long, stretching ahead like a tunnel of suspense. Lorenzo's breath came in measured, silent gasps, each exhale fogging slightly in the sterile hospital air. The neon red and blue lights from emergency vehicles outside flickered against the walls, casting his shadow in jagged patterns that made him look like a phantom of vengeance. Every step he took echoed through the empty hall, the sound amplified by the cold tiles and the quiet hum of machines behind closed doors. He moved like a predator, senses razor sharp, every nerve on edge. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was survival. For Mia. For the child. For the first time in years, Lorenzo felt his heartbeat sync with something beyond money, beyond territory, beyond fear. He felt responsibility. And that responsibility carried weight. At the end of the hallway, the sound of hurried footsteps approached from the stairwell. Not hospital staff, heavy, deliberate. Trained movements, weapons hidden beneath coats. Lorenzo's grip on the pistol tightened until his knuckles ached. He leaned against the wall, listening. He could hear their approach even before he saw them. Two men, silent but deadly, every step calibrated to strike fear. In the silence, a beep from the heart monitor in room 12 cut sharply. He flinched. Not from surprise, but from the reminder that Mia's life hung by the thinnest of threads. One misstep, one stray bullet, and the child she carried would be lost forever. He had no margin for error. The first man rounded the corner. Lorenzo's blue eyes narrowed, calculating distance, angle, and timing. In one swift motion, he pivoted, aimed, and fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The sharp report reverberated down the corridor. The man froze, eyes wide, heart pounding. He had underestimated Lorenzo. The second man paused, calculating, then raised his weapon. The corridor became a deadly dance. Lorenzo's movements were precise, economical, strikes, feints, and controlled aggression. He disarmed the second man with a swift sweep of his leg, sending the gun clattering across the floor. The first man lunged, but Lorenzo's fist connected with bone, a crunch echoing like a drumbeat. Pain flashed across the intruder's face as he crumpled to the floor. Even in victory, Lorenzo did not celebrate. Every heartbeat reminded him of Mia's vulnerability inside room 12. He pressed forward, scanning for additional threats. The hospital was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a battlefield, sterile walls now concealing danger around every corner. He reached the door to Mia's room. Pushing it open, the sight stopped him cold for a heartbeat. She lay there, pale and fragile, tubes and monitors crisscrossing her body like veins of light. Her chest rose slowly with mechanical assistance, and then his eyes caught the glimmer. The baby, moving slightly beneath the hospital gown, an unmistakable sign of life. Relief surged, but it was sharp and brief. A folded piece of paper peeked from beneath her hand. Lorenzo hesitated for the first time, fingers trembling as he reached for it. Unfolding it, he found writing in a familiar hand, small, hurried, desperate. "Lorenzo, they know. I tried to call you, but it never went through. Protect the baby. Don't let them take her. Don't trust anyone." His pulse quickened. She had known danger was near, had attempted to reach him, and had been silenced before he even knew. Rage, guilt, and fear collided in his chest. This was no random accident. Someone had tracked her, someone had orchestrated this, and it was precise, calculated, and merciless. A sound behind him, a click, a shadow shifting, snapped him out of his reverie. Lorenzo spun, gun raised, blue eyes scanning for the source. Out of the dim hospital light emerged a figure he recognized immediately. A man in a dark suit, face obscured by a surgical mask, movements deliberate and trained. The moment their eyes met, Lorenzo knew this wasn't a man acting alone. There were more, and they had a singular purpose. The intruder spoke, voice low but edged with malice. "Step away from her, DeLuca. This isn't about you. It's about what she carries. Hand over the child or she dies." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Rage surged hotter than ever. He had faced killers before, traitors, rival gang leaders, even assassins. But this threat, this leverage over the one person he had ever truly cared for, was personal, and personal meant he would not hesitate. He stepped forward, pistol raised, every muscle coiled like a spring. His voice was calm, but beneath the surface it roared with fury. "You don't get to threaten her. You don't get to touch what's mine." The man smiled beneath the mask. "Then prepare to lose everything, Lorenzo. We've been watching, waiting. You are late." The word struck him like a physical blow. He had arrived at the hospital, but not in time to prevent the setup, not in time to protect her entirely. Every second he had wasted, every moment he had underestimated the enemy, now compounded the danger. Lorenzo didn't hesitate. He fired first, precise, controlled, aiming not to kill unnecessarily, but to neutralize. The intruder dove for cover, gunfire echoing against the sterile walls, monitors beeping louder, alarms starting to flash. Lorenzo moved, calculating every step, protecting Mia while striking with lethal efficiency. The battle was no longer just about pride. It was about survival, about reclaiming control over what had been slipping through his fingers for years. Amid the chaos, he saw her stir slightly, eyes fluttering, a soft whimper escaping her lips. His heart clenched. He could not afford to panic. One wrong shot, one missed movement, and the life inside her and the child could vanish in an instant. Then came the sound that froze him, the unmistakable click of another weapon being cocked. He spun toward the corridor entrance, more figures emerging from the shadows, moving with the confidence of trained killers. His mind raced. He had underestimated them. There were too many. Even Lorenzo DeLuca, the untouchable, the feared, the untamed, realized in that instant that he might not make it out unscathed. He ducked behind a mobile medical cart, heart hammering, eyes darting. Every instinct screamed fight or flight, but there was no fleeing. Mia's life depended on him. Every heartbeat, every second counted. The intruders advanced slowly, methodically, using the hospital environment to their advantage. And then, amidst the chaos, Lorenzo saw it. A figure standing at the end of the corridor, tall, commanding, face obscured by shadows. This was no ordinary thug. Every movement, every stance, every aura screamed authority and lethal intent. He recognized the figure immediately, not by face, but by presence. This was someone orchestrating everything, someone who had planned Mia's predicament from the beginning. The intruder at the end raised a gloved hand slightly, signaling, and the others halted, all eyes fixed on Lorenzo. A silent message passed between them, calculated, cold, deliberate. The weight of their threat pressed down on him, the tension snapping tighter than any physical binding. Lorenzo realized, with a chill that crawled down his spine, that the game had shifted. This wasn't just about the city, about territory, or about pride. This was personal, and he had walked straight into it. He gritted his teeth, adrenaline coursing, mind racing for a plan, every muscle tensed, every thought sharpened, every heartbeat loud in the oppressive silence that followed. He knew one thing: to survive, to protect Mia, and to protect the child she carried, he had to confront the orchestrator directly. There was no other option. And then, the shadowed figure at the end of the corridor finally stepped forward, just enough for Lorenzo to see the glint of a familiar emblem pinned to his coat, a symbol of betrayal so deep, so calculated that it cut sharper than any blade. Lorenzo froze, heart hammering. Recognition hit him like ice. This wasn't a random attack. This wasn't just Vinny's men. This was someone he had trusted, someone from his own inner circle. And at that moment, the figure smiled beneath the mask. "Surprised to see me here, Lorenzo? Welcome to the real game." The fluorescent lights in the ICU hallway flickered as Lorenzo's eyes remained locked on the shadowed figure at the end of the corridor. Rain from earlier storms still traced wet trails down the windows, casting shimmering streaks of red and blue across the sterile walls. Lorenzo's heartbeat pounded, each thud echoing in his ears like a war drum. The city outside, with all its chaos and noise, felt distant, irrelevant. Here, in this corridor, the world had shrunk to a single deadly confrontation. The figure stepped forward, movements fluid, controlled. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed, tracing the emblem pinned to the man's coat, a symbol he had seen countless times, worn by someone he had trusted with blood, power, and secrets. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the familiarity with the threat. Every instinct screamed that this man, this orchestrator, was no mere rival. It was a traitor from inside his own inner circle. "You." Lorenzo's voice was low, strained, barely more than a growl. "It can't be you, not you." The man's eyes glinted beneath the surgical mask. "Believe what you will, Lorenzo," he said smoothly, voice even, devoid of fear or hesitation. "I've always done what was necessary, even if it meant using someone you trusted." Lorenzo's mind flashed back. Countless moments, decisions, orders, conversations. Every time he had leaned on this man, he had believed in loyalty, in honor within his inner circle. And now, every trust, every reliance was a lie. Rage surged hotter than he had ever felt, mingling with helplessness, guilt, and fear. He had been blindsided, and Mia's life and their child hung in the balance. "You've endangered her. My child," Lorenzo said through gritted teeth. "Why? What's the point?" The traitor smirked, tilting his head slightly. "The point, Lorenzo. Power. Survival. The baby is leverage. And you're predictable. Pride blinds you. You'd rather hurt yourself than see the truth." Truth. The word hit Lorenzo like a physical blow. He realized with chilling clarity that every misstep, every act of arrogance had been anticipated. Every guard, every move, every hesitation, they had calculated it. And now he was standing on a knife's edge, one wrong move away from disaster. The corridor suddenly seemed smaller. Lorenzo shifted his weight, every muscle coiled. The hospital staff had disappeared, retreating from the silent storm of confrontation. Only the pulse of the monitors and the faint hum of the ventilation system filled the space. Every heartbeat reminded him of the fragility of Mia's condition, the child's survival, the stakes that had become impossibly high. "You underestimate me," Lorenzo said, moving forward slowly, deliberately. "I don't care about leverage. I don't care about threats. I don't care about games. Step aside, or I will make sure no one walks out of here alive." The traitor laughed softly, almost amused. "Oh, Lorenzo. You always were a man of action, but action isn't enough this time. You're emotional, blinded. You're predictable." He stepped closer, and for the first time, Lorenzo caught a glimpse of the cold intelligence in his eyes that mirrored his own in sharp clarity, yet twisted by betrayal. The tension was unbearable. Both men were poised, ready to strike. aware that one miscalculation could be fatal. Lorenzo's blue eyes darted, calculating distances, angles, possibilities. The traitor mirrored him, anticipating his every thought, his every instinct. This was no ordinary fight. It was a battle of wits, precision, and willpower. Suddenly, the traitor made the first move, lunging toward Lorenzo with a suppressed blade. Lorenzo sidestepped instinctively, the cold steel missing him by inches. The motion was fluid, practiced, honed by years of fighting and survival. He countered, striking the man's arm, disarming him, but not injuring him fatally, yet. Every strike, every feint was measured, because Mia's life and the unborn child depended on restraint. The corridor became a battlefield. Chairs toppled, medical carts scattered, monitors beeped louder as if in alarm at the intensity of the fight. Lorenzo's mind was razor sharp, every tactic rehearsed in seconds. He had to protect Mia while neutralizing the man who had once been his confidant. Failure was not an option. As the fight continued, Lorenzo's eyes flicked to the ICU door. Through the small glass window, he saw Mia's chest rise and fall, faint but steady. Relief and terror collided inside him. The child she carried was alive, for now, but every second that passed increased the risk. Suddenly, a soft, muffled sound reached his ears, a whisper from Mia. She was stirring, her fingers twitching. He couldn't risk turning his back, couldn't risk leaving the doorway unguarded. Every strike he made was precise, controlling the distance, keeping the traitor at bay, while simultaneously shielding the room from any threat. And then came the realization. A new, horrifying piece of information flashed through his mind. The traitor had been in league with Vinny, the rival gang leader who had orchestrated the initial attack. The betrayal was not isolated. It was a network, a conspiracy designed to eliminate Mia, the child, and ultimately Lorenzo himself. Anger surged. Every instinct screamed retaliation. He lunged with controlled force, sending the traitor sprawling against a wall, crashing into equipment. The sound was deafening, echoing through the empty hallway. But the man rolled, smirk still on his face, rising with effortless agility. He held up a small device, a phone connected to cameras in the hospital. "They're watching, Lorenzo. Every move you make, every second you hesitate, it's all on display." Lorenzo froze. The weight of the surveillance, the calculated trap, pressed down on him. He realized that this was not just a physical battle. It was psychological warfare, designed to break him, strip him of control, and push him to make mistakes. Breathing heavily, he assessed the corridor, the room, the angles. He had to act. Every second was a countdown. The traitor lunged again, faster this time, blade flashing. Lorenzo met him mid-strike, grappling, twisting, using the momentum to disarm him. The weapon clattered across the floor, landing near Mia's bed. The fight paused. Both men chest heaving, eyes locked, sweat and rain from earlier storms still streaked across Lorenzo's face. He realized the corridor had become a cage, with no room for error. One wrong move, one distraction, and the enemy would strike not just him, but Mia, the child. Suddenly the traitor smirked, voice low and menacing. "You think this ends here? You have no idea what's coming next. The real player hasn't even arrived." Lorenzo's grip tightened on his pistol, jaw clenched. His mind raced, trying to anticipate the next move. Every instinct screamed that the danger was far from over. The betrayal was deeper than he had imagined. Someone else was orchestrating events behind the scenes, and their identity was unknown. Through the glass of the ICU door, he saw Mia stir again. Her fingers curled, reaching slightly, as if sensing the presence of danger outside. Lorenzo's chest tightened. The child she carried, his bloodline, the symbol of what he had nearly lost, was in imminent danger. He took a step toward the door, gun raised, eyes scanning every shadow, every reflection, every angle. The hospital corridor was silent now, but silence had never been more dangerous. Every sound, every heartbeat, every breath mattered. And then, from the far end of the hallway, a faint shadow shifted, larger than human, deliberate, slow. The final piece of the puzzle moved into place, a presence that had been orchestrating every attack, every betrayal, every step Lorenzo had taken since Mia's arrival at the hospital. The shadow moved closer, and Lorenzo realized with a jolt of icy dread that it wasn't just a person. It was someone from his past, someone he thought was dead, someone whose return would change everything. Lorenzo's blue eyes widened as the figure stepped fully into the flickering red and blue light. Recognition struck him like a knife. A gasp caught in his throat. The one person he had never expected to see alive was standing before him, smiling. And in that instant, Lorenzo knew that the war he had only just begun had just become personal. The hospital corridor seemed endless, stretching into darkness as Lorenzo's sharp blue eyes scanned every shadow. Rain from the storm outside seeped in through cracks near the sliding doors, dripping onto the polished floor, creating slick surfaces that reflected the red and blue emergency lights. His suit, though expensive, was soaked, clinging to his body, but he barely noticed. Every ounce of his being focused on the danger ahead, on Mia, on the child he had yet to meet, and on the figure stepping toward him from the shadows, alive, smiling, and impossible. He raised his pistol, finger tense on the trigger, but his mind ran through calculations with lightning speed. This wasn't just a fight. It was a test of reflexes, strategy, and survival. Every heartbeat echoed like a warning, one misstep, one distraction, and everything he cared about. Mia, the child, even his own life, could vanish in an instant. The figure stepped closer, revealing more. Tall, broad, movements precise, trained, each motion radiating control. Lorenzo's breath caught. The face beneath the hood was one he had believed gone forever, buried in the shadows of his past. The one person whose return carried the weight of betrayal, pain, and unfinished business. His pulse surged. The room narrowed to a single point of tension, every fiber of his body screaming readiness. "You're alive," Lorenzo breathed, voice low, controlled, yet tinged with disbelief and rage. "After everything. How?" The figure's lips curled into a faint smirk. "I never left, Lorenzo. I just waited and watched. You've done so much, without realizing the real game began years ago." Lorenzo's hand tightened on the weapon. Anger and fear collided, forming a single unrelenting drive. "You've endangered her. You've endangered the child. I will not allow this. Not now. Not ever." The figure laughed softly, almost amused. "You always were predictable, DeLuca. Pride, arrogance, easily manipulated. You blocked her messages, ignored warnings, and now, look where it's brought you. Do you feel it? The inevitability?" Lorenzo's mind raced. He could hear the faint beeping of Mia's monitors through the glass, the subtle rise and fall of her chest, and the almost imperceptible movement of the child beneath her gown. Every instinct screamed precision, but his emotions burned like fire: rage, guilt, fear, desperation, all mixed into a violent cocktail. The first move came swiftly. The figure lunged, blade flashing under the flickering fluorescent lights. Lorenzo pivoted, firing a warning shot into the ceiling, metal sparks scattering against the tiles. The sound ricocheted, but the intruder didn't flinch. He had anticipated every step, every tactic, every hesitation. Lorenzo advanced, movements calculated, his body a weapon honed by years of survival. He struck with brutal precision, disarming the first attack, sending the weapon skittering across the corridor. The opponent recovered instantly, countering with rapid, fluid strikes. Lorenzo blocked, twisted, struck, each motion deliberate, restrained. He could not risk a stray blow. Mia's life and the child's survival depended on control, and every instinct screamed that losing control was not an option. The corridor became a battlefield. Medical carts toppled, monitors beeped erratically, alarms flashed. Lorenzo moved like a shadow, silent, lethal, balancing aggression with protection. The intruder was fast, but Lorenzo was faster, anticipation honed by years of dealing with killers, betrayers, and enemies who underestimated him. A sudden noise drew his attention, a nurse pushing a gurney, caught in the crossfire, screaming. Lorenzo pivoted, neutralized the threat with a controlled strike, then returned to face his enemy. Every second mattered, every heartbeat counted. The intruder lunged again, but Lorenzo had learned his rhythm, his strategy. He ducked, twisted, and struck with a calculated blow that sent the figure staggering back. The fight paused momentarily, both men breathing hard, sweat mingling with rain dripping from Lorenzo's soaked hair. The corridor was littered with debris, the sterile hospital walls now a chaotic battlefield. Red and blue lights reflected off the floor, creating a surreal, cinematic glow. Lorenzo's eyes darted toward Mia's room. She had stirred slightly, fingers curling toward consciousness. The child inside her was still alive, but for how long? The figure smirked beneath the mask. "You think this is over? You've only scratched the surface. Vinny isn't here yet. He's waiting for the final act, and when he arrives, your world will burn." Lorenzo's grip on the pistol tightened, knuckles white. Rage boiled hotter, sharper. He had faced impossible odds before, yet never had he felt the stakes this high. Every decision mattered. Every motion could mean life or death. And this enemy, someone he once trusted, knew him too well, anticipated too much, planned too perfectly. He lunged forward again, this time grappling the intruder, twisting, sending him crashing into a wall. The impact shook the corridor. Dust fell from the ceiling. Alarms blared louder. Lorenzo's breath was ragged, every muscle screaming, yet he remained focused, every movement precise. He could not allow the figure to recover, not now, not ever. Suddenly, the intruder rolled away, retrieving a device from his pocket. Lorenzo's sharp eyes caught the faint screen glow. Hospital blueprints, security camera feeds, movement trackers. They were orchestrated. Every action, every step of Lorenzo's so-called heroism had been observed and anticipated. A rush of adrenaline surged through Lorenzo. He realized that this was bigger than one man, bigger than a single hospital attack. Vinny's network was more dangerous than he had imagined. The conspiracy ran deeper, wider, and deadlier, and Mia and the child were right in the center of it. The intruder lunged again, weapon raised, but Lorenzo anticipated it. He sidestepped, twisting, and delivered a precise, controlled blow, sending the figure sprawling. But as the man fell, he smirked and whispered through clenched teeth, "This isn't the end." Not by far. The real game begins when you least expect it. Lorenzo froze for a heartbeat. Every instinct screamed danger. He looked toward Mia's room. The monitors beeped erratically. The child shifted slightly beneath her gown. Life. Fragile. Delicate. Alive. He could not fail. Not now. And then the final horror struck. A sound from above. A muted thud, faint but deliberate. He glanced up at the hospital mezzanine. Shadows moved. Too many. Organized. Trained. And then he understood. Reinforcements. Vinny's men not here yet, but arriving. Fast. Coordinated. Lethal. His heart pounded, every nerve screaming. He had neutralized one threat, but the battle was far from over. The enemy had planned this meticulously, and Lorenzo was running out of time. Mia, the child, the future of his bloodline, everything was on the line. And then, a voice cut through the chaos. A calm, chilling voice echoing down the corridor. "DeLuca, you should have stayed away. Now it's too late." Lorenzo's blue eyes narrowed, pistol raised, muscles coiled. The shadowed figures were descending the stairs in synchronized steps, surrounding the corridor. He realized with icy clarity that the enemy was stronger, faster, and more ruthless than he had ever imagined. And this time, Mia's life hung in the balance, and he was dangerously outnumbered. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows across the hospital corridor. Lorenzo's suit was drenched from the rain outside, dark fabric clinging to his chest as he crouched behind a toppled gurney. Every breath he took was sharp and deliberate, controlled, but his mind raced. Outside, the storm had calmed, but inside, the building had transformed into a battlefield, a place where every second could be the last for Mia, for the child, for him. The shadows at the end of the corridor were no longer abstract. They moved with purpose, precision, and lethal intent. Vinny's men were descending from the mezzanine, trained and coordinated, their weapons gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Their footsteps were synchronized, like a heartbeat counting down the inevitable. Lorenzo's pulse surged in response, every instinct screaming for action. He adjusted his grip on the pistol, knuckles white. Years of combat, of survival, had honed him into a weapon. But this was different. The stakes were personal. Every shot, every movement, every decision had to be perfect. One misstep could end Mia's life. One stray bullet could extinguish the child inside her. Failure was not an option. The first gunfire erupted, a sharp staccato rhythm that echoed off the sterile walls. Lorenzo dived behind a medical cart, the bullets embedding themselves in the metal with sparks. The enemy was skilled, coordinated, and ruthless. He could see the faint movement of a figure rolling from cover to cover, closing in on him with predatory precision. Lorenzo fired in return, each shot calculated, aimed not to waste ammunition but to neutralize threats while maintaining control. The corridor became chaos incarnate, toppled chairs, shattered glass, monitors sparking from stray rounds, alarms wailing in response to the commotion. Through it all, his eyes flicked to room 12. Mia's chest rose and fell, faint but steady, tubes and wires crisscrossing her fragile form. The child moved slightly beneath her gown, an almost imperceptible shift. Life. Delicate, fragile, miraculous. He had to protect it at all costs. A shadow detached itself from the group of Vinny's men, advancing rapidly toward him. Lorenzo anticipated the movement, pivoted, and struck with precision. The man went down, but two more immediately replaced him, trained to exploit any lapse. Lorenzo's mind was a storm of calculations: distance, timing, angles, threat neutralization. Every second was critical. The hallway seemed to shrink with each passing moment. Red and blue lights flashed in erratic patterns, reflecting off wet floors, glinting on weapons, highlighting every muscle tensed for combat. Lorenzo moved fluidly, a blur of calculated strikes, sidesteps, and retaliations. He was alone, outnumbered, and yet lethal. A sudden flash of movement to his left, another enemy attempting to flank him. Lorenzo pivoted mid-strike, delivering a brutal kick that sent the intruder crashing into the wall. The sound of impact reverberated through the corridor. He barely had time to breathe before another shadow lunged from behind a toppled IV stand. The fight was relentless. Sweat and rain mixed on Lorenzo's skin, dripping into his eyes, stinging but not slowing him down. Each strike, each shot was measured. He could not afford distraction, could not afford mistake. Mia's life depended on it. The child's life depended on it. Then, through the chaos, he caught sight of a figure approaching room 12. Someone was attempting to breach the ICU. His blood ran cold. He lunged forward, intercepting the intruder with the force of a storm. The two grappled violently, rolling across the floor, each strike calculated, each movement precise. Lorenzo finally overpowered the man, sending him sprawling, but the corridor was far from clear. Another wave of enemies advanced, converging from both ends. Lorenzo ducked behind a toppled hospital cart, the metal scraping under the weight of the impact. He fired a shot, taking out one attacker, but more pressed forward relentlessly. Every instinct screamed urgency. He could not hold them all off indefinitely. He had to create an opening, a path to Mia, a chance to protect her and the child. His mind raced, calculating, improvising, strategizing in real time. Amid the chaos, the figure from his past, the one he had never expected to see alive, stepped into view. Tall, imposing, every movement deliberate. This was the orchestrator, the one who had set everything in motion. His smile was cold, calculated, almost mocking. "You've done well so far, Lorenzo," he said, voice calm against the cacophony of gunfire. "But this is only the beginning. The real game starts now." Lorenzo's pulse thundered in his ears. He realized the depth of the conspiracy. Vinny's men, the orchestrator, the betrayal, the attack. It had all been coordinated, precise, and intended to crush him completely. He could no longer rely solely on skill or reflex. He needed strategy, ruthlessness, and focus like never before. He fired, disarming one enemy and sending another crashing into the wall. His movements were lethal but controlled, each action designed to protect Mia while eliminating threats. The corridor was a chaotic ballet of violence, sparks flying, alarms screaming, shadows twisting in the harsh red and blue light. Then came the sound that made his blood run cold, a soft, deliberate click from the far end of the corridor. Lorenzo's head snapped toward the noise. A sniper, positioned somewhere above, had locked onto Mia's room. Every instinct screamed danger. He had seconds to act, seconds to protect her, seconds to prevent disaster. He darted toward the ICU, using the chaos as cover. Each step was calculated, precise. He could feel his pulse in his temples, his muscles coiled like springs, ready to explode. The sniper's presence added another layer of urgency. One wrong move, and it would be over. Lorenzo reached room 12 and slammed the door shut behind him, barricading it with a metal tray. He looked at Mia, pale, fragile, but alive. Her fingers twitched slightly, reaching for something she couldn't yet grasp. He knelt beside her, scanning the monitors. Her heartbeat was steady, but the child's movements were faint. He whispered under his breath, "Hold on. I'm not letting anyone take you from me." The sound of footsteps outside the room grew louder. The orchestrator had not retreated. His presence outside the door was palpable, a silent threat that radiated tension. Every second that passed increased the danger to Mia and the child. Lorenzo's mind raced, formulating the next move, calculating angles, considering escape routes, and preparing for a confrontation that could determine life or death. Then came the faintest whisper from the ventilator, almost drowned by the alarms. Mia stirred, eyes fluttering. She was conscious but weak, aware enough to sense the danger outside. Her hand brushed the device that Lorenzo had used to barricade the door, a soft tremor running through her body. The orchestrator's voice rang out, calm, deliberate, echoing through the corridor. "DeLuca, you've reached the end of your path. Step aside or everything ends tonight." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Blue eyes, sharp and cold, met the direction of the voice. He realized the orchestrator was testing him, gauging his reaction, drawing him into a trap. He had seconds, mere heartbeats, to make a decision that could save Mia and the child, or doom them both. The corridor was silent now, save for the distant beeping of monitors and the soft drip of rain from the storm outside. Lorenzo's muscles tensed, every nerve coiled, every sense heightened. Outside, reinforcements gathered, weapons raised, ready to strike. The sniper's scope still tracked Mia's room, waiting for the slightest movement. Lorenzo's mind flashed through all possibilities: fight, escape, negotiation, sacrifice. The weight of the child's life, of Mia's fragile body, pressed down on him. He could not afford hesitation. He could not afford failure. And then, with deliberate, chilling precision, The orchestrator stepped into the red and blue light outside the ICU door, silhouette framed perfectly in the flickering glow. His voice was calm, but every word dripped with menace. "Tonight, DeLuca, you will make a choice, but choose wrong. And the city, your empire, and the life you tried to protect, all of it burns." Lorenzo's grip on his pistol tightened, knuckles white, heart racing, mind calculating every move in an instant. Outside, the orchestrator's men advanced, weapons ready, sniper locked on Mia's room. The storm of gunfire, betrayal, and danger pressed in from every side. And in that heartbeat, Lorenzo realized with bone-deep certainty, the next move he makes will decide if Mia lives or dies. The hallway outside room 12 was a tension-charged gauntlet, every inch a trap, every shadow hiding potential death. Lorenzo crouched behind the overturned gurney, his pulse hammering like the drums of a battlefield. Rainwater mixed with the sweat on his forehead, dripping into his eyes, but he barely noticed. He could feel the sniper's gaze locked on Mia, the orchestrator's men advancing step by step, and the faint but unmistakable hum of monitors inside the ICU, as if the machines themselves were holding their breath. He knew there was no time for hesitation. Every second wasted increased the odds of catastrophe. He raised his pistol cautiously, scanning left, right, the mezzanine above, the corridor beyond. One wrong move, and the life of the woman lying unconscious behind that door and the child she carried would vanish in an instant. The orchestrator, cloaked in shadow, emerged fully from the corridor end, calm and deliberate, every motion radiating control. Behind him, his men spread out with lethal precision, forming a human net designed to hem Lorenzo in. The sniper's scope reflected briefly in the glass above, a thin red dot locking on the ICU bed. Lorenzo's blue eyes flicked rapidly, calculating angles, distances, timing, possibilities. He could see it all: entrances, exits, vulnerabilities. But the challenge was timing. One miscalculation could kill Mia before he even had a chance to strike. Every step, every motion had to be perfectly choreographed. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "I'm not losing you. Not now. Not ever." Then the first gunfire erupted, a sharp, deliberate warning shot from the orchestrator's right-hand man. Lorenzo rolled behind the cart, bullets embedding themselves in the tile and metal with sparks that hissed and echoed. He fired back in controlled bursts, each shot precise, each aimed at neutralizing threats while keeping Mia safe. The corridor erupted into chaos. Alarms blared, monitors beeped wildly, and every shadow seemed alive with potential death. Lorenzo moved with lethal grace, weaving between fallen carts, toppling obstacles as he advanced. His every breath was measured, his every muscle coiled, ready to strike at the precise moment. He saw movement near the far end, 2 men attempting to flank him, weapons raised. Lorenzo pivoted, striking the first with a brutal precision that sent him crashing into a wall. The second lunged, but Lorenzo anticipated, twisting mid-motion and sending the man sprawling to the floor. Pain, fear, and adrenaline mixed into a chaotic symphony around him, but he remained focused on the room where Mia lay. A sudden shift of shadow above caught his attention. The sniper, perched on the mezzanine, had readied his rifle. A bead of red light shone on the glass of the ICU window, targeting the bed. The child inside, fragile and unprotected, could be gone with a single misfired shot. Lorenzo dove for cover, using the toppled medical carts as shields. He scanned rapidly, planning, calculating. The sniper's trajectory, the orchestrator's movements, the corridor's twists and angles. Every factor had to be accounted for. He gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of responsibility, the crushing intensity of the moment. Then came a soft click, the sniper's safety off. Lorenzo's instinct screamed. He pushed forward, darting across the corridor with lightning speed, firing precise shots to neutralize approaching attackers, while simultaneously moving toward the ICU door. His movements were a blur of lethal grace, controlled chaos, pure focus. He reached the door, barricading it quickly with a metal tray. The monitors inside flickered under the pressure, Mia's chest rising faintly, the child inside still alive. Relief surged for a heartbeat, then was immediately replaced by raw awareness. The orchestrator's figure loomed closer, the sniper's aim steady, the men in the corridor closing in like a tightening vice. Lorenzo's mind raced, adrenaline fueling clarity. He realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. He had to outthink them, manipulate the environment, exploit their assumptions. Every heartbeat was critical, every second a chance for life or death. He fired a calculated shot toward the sniper's perch, the echo bouncing off the walls. The gunman swore under his breath, readjusted and fired back, a tracer bullet skimming dangerously close to the ICU window. Lorenzo ducked instinctively, feeling the blast's air ripple past him. The orchestrator smirked, voice calm, deliberate, almost mocking. "Do you really think you can protect her, DeLuca? Every move you make has been anticipated." Lorenzo's pulse surged, anger and focus coalescing into a single force. "I don't care about your plans. I don't care about your games. If you touch her, if you harm her, I will end everything you love, right here, right now." The orchestrator chuckled, tilting his head slightly. "Bold words, but words won't save her. You need a choice, Lorenzo. One shot, one decision. Your next move determines if she lives or dies." Lorenzo's mind raced. He could see the sniper readjusting, the men closing in, the corridor tightening, the storm of violence pressing from every side. He weighed options, possibilities, consequences. And then he realized the orchestrator's challenge was psychological. He wanted Lorenzo to panic, to make a mistake, to expose Mia to deadly risk. He steadied himself, breath deep, focus absolute. One step, one precise movement could create the opening he needed. He needed to distract, neutralize, and shield, all simultaneously. The corridor, the sniper, the orchestrator, and his men became variables in a single equation of life and death. He fired again, a controlled burst toward the nearest threat, sending the man sprawling, then pivoted, using the chaos to shield the ICU door. The sniper adjusted, firing a precise shot that shattered glass near the barricade, spraying shards but missing Mia. Lorenzo's heart slammed in his chest. He had seconds to protect her and the child. Then a new, horrifying sound, a low, deliberate hum from the mezzanine. Another sniper, concealed, joining the attack. The odds had just doubled. Lorenzo's pulse surged. He could not fail. He would not fail. Every muscle coiled, every reflex sharpened, every thought focused on survival, protection, and retaliation. And then, as if from nowhere, a movement inside the ICU. Mia stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open, barely conscious. Her gaze met Lorenzo's, a mix of fear and trust passing between them. In that heartbeat, everything crystallized. He had to act. No hesitation, no doubt. The orchestrator's voice cut through the tension. "Decide, DeLuca. One choice, one wrong move, and everything you care about ends tonight." Cliffhanger. Lorenzo's hand tightened on the pistol, blue eyes locking on the orchestrator, his mind calculating, his body coiled for the strike. Outside, reinforcements moved closer, sniper sights locked on Mia. Time slowed. Every breath counted. Every second was life or death. And in that frozen moment, Lorenzo realized the truth. To save Mia and the child, he would have to make a decision that could destroy everything he had built, or die trying. The ICU lights flickered violently, throwing long, jagged shadows across the sterile hallway. Every sound, footsteps, breathing, the distant hum of monitors, was amplified, reverberating off the walls like a death knell. Lorenzo's blue eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the corridor, calculating each movement, every possibility. The orchestrator's men were closing in, silent, lethal, perfectly synchronized. The sniper's red dot lingered on the ICU window, a thin, glowing line aimed at Mia and the unborn child. Lorenzo crouched behind an overturned gurney, soaked from the storm that had passed outside, every muscle coiled for action. His pulse pounded in rhythm with the alarms, his mind racing through calculations, strategies, contingencies. He had seconds to act, seconds to protect Mia, seconds to preserve the future of his bloodline. Every heartbeat was critical, every breath a reminder that the child's life hung by a thread. The orchestrator emerged from the shadows, calm and deliberate, movements precise, almost predatory. Behind him, his men fanned out, weapons glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights, every step measured to trap Lorenzo in a deadly corridor. "DeLuca," the orchestrator's voice was low and deliberate. "This ends tonight. Make your choice, or lose everything." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Pride, rage, and fear fused into a single, razor-sharp focus. He knew brute force alone wouldn't win this battle. He had to outthink them, manipulate the environment, exploit assumptions. Every second counted. Every decision was life or death. He darted forward, moving with fluid precision, taking cover behind overturned carts and debris. Each gunshot, each movement was calculated to neutralize threats while protecting the ICU door. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal, alarms blared louder, and the corridor became a chaotic battlefield. The sniper fired. A bullet shattered glass above the ICU bed, showering shards but missing Mia. Lorenzo reacted instantly, firing a precise counter shot that silenced the sniper. But there was no time to celebrate. Reinforcements were descending from the mezzanine, a new wave of lethal efficiency pressing closer. He pivoted, striking the nearest attacker with brutal precision, sending him sprawling, then twisting to intercept another. Each movement was a calculated ballet of survival, every strike controlled, measured. He could not risk stray blows. Mia and the child depended on his restraint and skill. Inside the ICU, Mia's eyes fluttered open, weak, frightened, but conscious enough to sense the chaos outside. Her fingers trembled, reaching instinctively toward Lorenzo. His chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to shield her, to neutralize the threat, to survive for them both. The orchestrator smiled coldly, voice echoing through the corridor. "Do you really think brute force will save her? You have to make a choice, DeLuca. One wrong move and she's gone. Both of them." Lorenzo's mind raced. He assessed angles, distances, threats. Every option carried risk. Every path could end in death. He knew the orchestrator wanted him to panic, to make a mistake, to expose Mia. But panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. Focus was the only weapon he had. He fired again, striking the nearest enemy, pivoting, diving for cover behind a medical cart. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off metal. The corridor echoed with chaos, a symphony of violence and desperation. His pulse surged, each movement precise, calculated, lethal. Then came the movement that froze him. One of the orchestrator's men had slipped inside the ICU. Lorenzo's heart leapt. Mia's life and the child's were within reach of a knife. Without thinking, he lunged, tackling the man, using his body as a shield. The struggle was brutal, every muscle screaming, but Lorenzo's training and desperation won. The intruder went down, groaning, incapacitated but not fatally harmed. He glanced at Mia. She was pale, trembling, but alive. The child inside her shifted slightly, a reminder of the stakes. Relief was fleeting. The orchestrator's voice rang again, calm and terrifying. "You're running out of time, DeLuca. The choice you make next will decide everything." Lorenzo's eyes scanned the corridor, the mezzanine, the positions of the remaining enemies. The sniper's scope still tracked the ICU, the orchestrator and his men closing in. He realized brute force wasn't enough. He needed to create a diversion, an opening, and force the enemy into a mistake. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, ripping the safety pin. Aiming carefully, he discharged it toward the corridor. A cloud of thick, blinding mist erupted, filling the hallway, sparking panic among the orchestrator's men. They coughed, stumbled, disoriented. Lorenzo seized the moment, firing precise shots to incapacitate the nearest threats while moving toward the ICU door. Mia's eyes widened, recognizing him. He grabbed her hand, whispering urgently, "Stay with me. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you or our child." Her fingers closed weakly around his, a fragile anchor in the storm. The orchestrator emerged from the smoke, silhouette barely visible, but lethal. He raised his weapon, aiming at Lorenzo. Lorenzo's pulse surged. 1 second, one choice. Every option carried unimaginable risk. He fired, aiming for the orchestrator's weapon, disarming him with a precise shot that sent the gun clattering across the corridor. But the orchestrator's smile never wavered. Clever. But the real choice hasn't even begun. You've protected her. For now. But what will you sacrifice to secure the future? Lorenzo's mind sharpened. He realized the final threat wasn't just the men in the corridor or the sniper. It was the orchestrator's plan to strike from multiple angles simultaneously. He had to act decisively. Every heartbeat mattered. He moved quickly, securing Mia behind a reinforced gurney, then turning to face the orchestrator fully. The sniper's position was still unaccounted for. Reinforcements pressing closer, the hospital trembling under the chaos. Lorenzo's finger hovered on the trigger, eyes locked on the enemy. Then a faint sound above. A second sniper descending from the mezzanine, already trained on the ICU. Lorenzo's chest tightened. He had seconds to neutralize the threat. He spotted a reflective surface, aimed his shot, disorienting the sniper just long enough to pivot toward the ICU door. Inside, Mia's chest rose and fell, faint but steady. The child shifted again. Life. Fragile, precious, and at stake. Lorenzo's heart clenched. He knew the next steps would define everything, their survival, the child's future, and the reckoning he had long prepared for. The orchestrator took a deliberate step forward, voice cold. "Decide, DeLuca. Sacrifice, risk, or death. One wrong move and everything ends. Your empire, your life, hers, all gone." Lorenzo's blue eyes narrowed, grip tight, body coiled. The sniper readjusted, men advanced, the orchestrator poised to strike. Time slowed. The weight of choice pressed down like steel. And in that suspended moment, Lorenzo realized the impossible. To save Mia and the child, he would have to confront not just his enemies, but the demons of his past, and the ultimate sacrifice might demand everything he holds dear. As Lorenzo exhaled, ready to act, the orchestrator's men surged forward, and a deafening shot rang out. Glass shattered, alarms screamed, and the corridor erupted in chaos. Mia screamed from inside the ICU. The child's movement became frantic, and in that heartbeat, Lorenzo knew the final confrontation had begun, and that the choice he made in the next second would either save them all or destroy everything he had ever fought for.